Right, so, about that Hydroid. Yes, this video is late, my apologies. I was working on something else when the update hit, and didn't want to take a break from that in order to do one on Hydroid. But anyway, so Hydroid is the next prime frame, and because of that, DE has adjusted some of his stats and powers just to make sure he's up to par with the current build of the game. His ability's got a few tweaks, some graphical updates, and some more tweaks with another hotfix. You can see more about it in some other videos, I'm sure. I'll link to it here somewhere. Now, a lot of the other YouTubers I follow weren't impressed. They didn't think the changes were drastic enough, but honestly, I'm thrilled with this update. If you watch my channel or play with me at all in-game, you probably know that Hydroid is one of my favorite frames, and this update didn't change anything I liked about him. He still plays exactly the same, and for that I am extremely grateful. The only thing I don't like is having to charge his fourth ability. That is literally the only thing. I think the reason people really didn't like it is because they didn't like Hydroid to start with. He just doesn't fit their playstyle. There's really nothing wrong with that, it's just part of the game. And in order to survive in the free-to-play market, Warframe needs to appeal to the broadest market possible, and because of that, it's in their best interest to offer frames that appeal to different kinds of players. So if Hydroid didn't appeal to you then, it doesn't have to appeal to you now. He's just targeting a different market. Having all these frames that play differently, that solve the problems presented by the game in different ways, this helps ensure that there's something for everyone, and they can appeal to the broadest market possible without appealing to the lowest common denominator within that market. If that makes any sense. Having a bunch of different frames can also challenge players to adapt their techniques and learn different skills, and this helps keep the game interesting and engaging for those who actually want to try these things. You know, try the new frames. And for those who don't, well, they don't have to. There's almost nothing mandating it unless you want your MR, and then you just level it to 30 and never touch it again. But for those who maybe don't understand Hydroid or want to learn how to play him better, I've compiled a few tips for you. And first and foremost, it's important to understand what Hydroid is, and he's a control frame. Within the game, every single frame that you can equip falls into one of 4 very broad categories. You have offense, defense, support, and control. Control frames, they get their title from being able to control the enemy, or control how they interact with the enemy. So Hydroid, he's not offensive, he's not really defensive, he's more control. So his what's the word I'm looking for here? His strength is in shutting down an area and preventing enemy movement. So when you're using Hydroid, it's important to look for choke points and places where enemies tend to gather, spawn points for example, and focus your attention there. Another thing that you have to keep in mind is that he's not a melee type frame, he works better at range. Now the update gave him some more armor, which gives him a little bit more survivability, but even though he looks like a tank frame, he's not a tank frame. He's better at range, he's better with keeping the enemy at a distance, at bay, and picking them off with explosive weapons or long-range rifles, things like that, rather than getting up close and personal. And the final piece of advice I have is to really take advantage of Hydroid's invincibility. He has 2 abilities that grant him invincibility from all damage, the first one being Tidal Surge and the second one being Undertow. So if you do notice enemies getting close, or if enemies really start to swarm you, you can just use one of these, and with both of them, not only do they grant Hydroid complete immunity from damage, but they also take the enemy off their feet, which will help you and help your squad. So if you plan how you use these and you use them smartly, you can prevent a lot of damage to Hydroid, because like I said, he's not a tank frame. 2 is also useful for getting around. If you are getting swarmed, like I said, Hydroid is a ranged fighter, so you can use 2 to quickly get out of an area, and then attack from a distance. Personally, I've built my Hydroid for range and duration, and it's been working pretty well for me. He's been on raids, he's been on sorties, and for the most part, he pulls his own weight. Anyway, that's kind of all I've got. So, yeah, stay frosty, my friends, and I will see you next time.